Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about approval rights and the PBAC approval option. So at this point in our application, we have created 3 rights in our video application. And on the last video, we related or linked up a field type called video category to one of the rights, meaning that when you assign the right or request the right, you have to pick a value because we have is required. You have to pick a value or one or more values for video category to say that you have that right, view video for these categories of videos, not for all videos unless you select all options, or if it were not required, if you select none of the options, then that means it's not restricted, no conditions on it. I did the same for the other rights while we were off camera, and now at this point, if we assign a right or if someone requests the right in the IM shop, it's going to go for approval. So we've already set up when we created these rights that the access request policy was PBAC approval. And what that means is that the access request policy governs a lot of settings about can you have the access permanently or just limited for time and some other settings. But one of the most important one is on the access request policy. It specifies the approval policy. And we picked one called PBAC approval, which in this system has a single step. And on that step, how it figures out the approvers or the approver resolver rule is PBAC. That's the approver resolver rule that we're using, not RBAC or manager, but PBAC. So what that means is that for these rights, that you need to create one right, or you could create one right for each of them, and that would be the approval right. So then let's say we run one right as the approval right, which is what we're going to do here, and then configure it. That means that anyone that you grant that approval right would be the approvers for the assignment of any of our 3 rights here. And now if you needed different approvers per right, then you could create additional approval rights and not just use one. So we're going to create a right very quickly. And we're just going to call it, we're going to be basic, we're going to call it vid approve. We'll just call it video approval right. Is the one approval right. Okay, we'll keep it simple. And location we don't care about. We talked about what that means in a previous video. It can be the same resource type, could be a different one. It doesn't really matter in that case because it's just the approval right. And now in this case, on this screen, we are not going to pick anything for split by value for approval because it's not. This is the right to control who can approve. We're not configuring how it gets approved. We're not going to put anything in PBAC approval right because that's where we'll put this right we're creating when we can on the other rights to set this one as their approval right. We're not going to float a person values. We talked about what the condition in which that might be used, and no fulfillment group. And we're not going to export it because this isn't really one that defines who can do what in our application. It's just one that you're going to use in Empower ID to make it easy to configure your virtual approval groups by granting this approval right to any people or roles or groups that you want to have it. So let's click Next. Now I'm just going to say my responsible party is myself. The owners, I can say application RBAC owner. Maybe I make myself an owner as well, just in case the policy doesn't grant the responsible party the same access. I'm not sure in this system. That's a configuration option. Now, we don't need it to be requestable. We use just a default policy. We're not going to use PBAC approval to approve a PBAC approval right. Wouldn't make any sense. Who's eligible? So eligibility, I'm just going to say anybody can have it assigned. Now, we're not going to make it requestable. I'll uncheck that. But let's leave that request checked. So I can basically say that in resource admin, if the admins want to assign it to someone, they can assign it to anyone. I picked viz-person-self, which means if a person can see themselves, they can be assigned this right, which is my kind of shortcut for assigning it to everyone. but you could do a different method there. Now that at least someone is eligible for it and can have it assigned, we can uncheck requestable because we don't want users to see it in the IM shop to request it. That's not something desirable. And now we're going to see a summary. And then we can just submit. And since we're the app owner in this system, we don't have it configured to go for approval. It's just going to create our new right. So now we have our new approval right. And at this point, we want to set this approval right and say for these other rights, when someone requests, let's say, edit video, that is the approval right for it. So let's go to manage this local right. Local right in the data model is the same as what we call app right. It's just another more database type terminology or API terminology for the same thing. So we're going to edit our right, our edit video. We're going to edit the settings. And now we're going to change it so that we set our approval right. And we're going to say the approval right is, I think, what did I call that? I called it approval right. There we go. We're going to say, okay, that any assignment of this right or request for edit video that goes for approval, it's going to route to the people who the app owners have granted the approval right. So pretty simple. And this one is exportable. And right now, we're not going to configure the split by value for approval. We'll talk about that later. We'll actually show you that. Right now, if you select multiple values, let's say I want to edit multiple categories of videos, then it's not going to split that into different business request items and have them go for different approval. We don't care at this point. Basically, if you have the approval right, you can approve edit video regardless of which category of video the user selected. So we don't care at that point. So we're just going to click finish. And now at this point, if someone requests edit video, say we don't want to do another one, we'll finish the workflow, it should go for approval to anyone who has been granted the approval right. Now at this point we haven't granted anyone the approval right, so we actually can't show that, but let's actually assign this approval right real quick so we can. Okay, so let's assign it to an approver, and I have another test user that I know can access the My Tasks approval interface. So let's pick Owen Way. And we're going to grant Owen the, he's not eligible for it. So he actually doesn't have that viz-person-self. Interesting. So he can't be assigned the approval video. So let me make that change. I'll go behind the scenes and actually grant him that right so he can actually see himself. And then we'll come right back here and we'll try this again in 1 second. Okay, now we're back in business. I gave Owen a proper IM shop access right that gives him the ability to view himself. So now we can grant Owen or assign Owen our approval right. So when we pick Owen here and in the pop-up, we should see the rights in our application for which he is eligible. And now he's eligible for the approval right. We'll add it to him. It doesn't have any field types on it, so we can just give it straight away, add it to the cart. And then I'm going to submit it, say what's the justification, then we'll do this. And approval right. Now this one uses the default. Okay, so now Owen has been submitted successfully, and since the approval policy is the default, it's probably going to go to Patrick or an admin, one of the owners or RBAC owners, for approval. So I'll go approve that as Patrick. Okay, so I did guess right. In my to-do list, in my task as Patrick, I have this one resource admin approval right for approval, the video approver. And add app right for Owen. We're going to approve it and submit our approval. And now it's approved. And as soon as it's fulfilled, then he should be an approver and have the approver right. and therefore when someone gets assigned or requests one of the other this other right that we just assigned it to, it'll get routed to him for approval. So let's check that out. So now that the fulfillment happened, the workflow came and picked it up, and it created the assignment because it was approved. We can see that Owen has been assigned the approval right. Now at this point, we should be able to go to the IM shop or in Resource Admin and assign the right or request the right and have it get routed to Owen for approval, because Owen has been assigned the approval right for the right that we are requesting. So let's request video application. We can request for ourselves or someone else. We're going to request the edit video right, which again requires field types. We'd added that behind the scenes. But again, at this point, even though the right we're requesting has scopes or field types restricting the access, Owen has the approval right, and it doesn't have any restrictions. So we haven't configured it where Owen has to have the approval right with the same field type values as is being requested to be the approver. If he had the approval right with no field type values, he should be the approver regardless of which field type values are selected, because he basically has the approval right unrestricted or unscoped. So let's add that to our card. Now let's go look at the card. I had something extra in there, I just removed it. So let's look here. So we are requesting the edit video right. Okay. We're going to evaluate the request for risk, which it won't have any risk. And then we're going to fill it out to submit it. I'm just going to say test of Owen as approver. And now the last step is just for us to validate that Owen was indeed routed as the approver. So your virtual approval group is whomever you assign the approval right. The good thing about that is that you do not have to create an actual group, an external object. You don't have to worry about the permissions for that. If you are allowed to assign rights in your app, especially specifically the approval rights, then you can assign and maintain your own approval groups or groups of approvers within the application in the same permissions model. So you don't have to cross PBAC with RBAC and complicate things. So at this point, we take a look at the Owen is the approver. This is the task. We go and look at the single assignment of our edit right. Then we should see Owen here as the approver. Now if we wanted multiple approvers, we could assign multiple people. If we wanted to assign this approval right to a group or a management role or even a business role location, we could. But in this case, we're just assigning it to Owen at this point to prove that it works. So that, just to recap, is a quick overview of, for your application, you have the rights that people want to request. You have one or more approval rights that control who can approve those right requests or those right assignments. And at this point, we've kept it simple. Even though the right we requested has scope or field type values, we're not having it go to different approvers depending upon those values yet. We'll see that in the next video. Actually, we'll see that right now in this video. Okay, now that we've seen basic approval routing to a virtual group of people assigned our approval right, now we're going to configure it to handle a case that's a little bit more advanced. So when we assign our edit video right, we have a field type associated to it, video category. And video category is there to scope which videos they can edit. Now, we had the different categories of videos. Now, in some organizations, the scope values might represent different departments. So maybe in this company, the different video categories are handled by different departments. They could be, the scope could be something like legal entities. So in that situation, there's really not the same approvers for those cases. So if they're different departments, you might want different approvers to say, yes, they can edit videos for our department. Or if it's legal entity, you'd want it to say, yes, that someone in that legal entity is the approver. So as you saw, we can, when we request or assign the video, though, we can assign multiple field type values. So that would typically as configured now, generate one business request, one approval request, and one business request item, which is the assignment of that right with those values. But in our case, we want to have them go individually for approval, so we have to configure a couple settings here. So let's go run the Manage Local Right wizard. Let's edit the settings. And now we're going to choose a setting we talked about earlier but we didn't check. So split by value for approval. What that means is split by field type value into unique business request items. So it's still going to be one order, one business request. But for every value they select, their scope value, or we call it field type value, it's going to generate a separate business request item for that right, for that value. That way, because the item is the unit of approval. So you approve items. So if you put it on one item, you can have different approvers for the same item because you really want them to be independent. One department or legal entity could approve their part and another could reject their part, but you want the value that got approved to go forward. So if we say split by approval, and we don't need to say anything else because we already have our approval right configured from before. Now, for edit video, when we add it to the shopping cart, it's going to split it into multiple requests. Okay, that executed successfully. There we go. We want to finish the workflow. Okay. So now, right now, we have our app right assignments. If we look at Owen, let's look at Owen. Owen is assigned the approval right. Sorry about that. Owen is assigned the approval right, but because we didn't need to, the approval right Okay, now if we take a look at Owen, Owen is the one that had been granted our approval right. And if we go look at edit, see at this point the approval right does not have any field type values because being granted this approval right would allow you to approve any of those other rights that were using it as an approval right. And the field type value didn't matter. But now since we configured our edit, let's go back and look, our edit video, we configured it to split the values by value for approval. So now in order to make our approval right the same, we need to go and add the same field type to it. That way when you grant the approval right, you can say some people can approve this approval, have this approval right, and can approve for these field type values, in our case the video category, but not for others. So let's go look at our approval right, and we are going to link the field type to it. Okay, so let's find our video category, let's link it. Now what this is going to allow us to do is that anyone assigned the approval right, we can say for which field type values they are allowed to approve. So now let's go look at Owen. If we go to edit, we can see that he now it wants us to pick a field type value for this approval right that he's been assigned. So let's say Owen is allowed to approve for compliance but not nature or marketing. We'll add that to our cart. And let's say here, add compliance to Owen. We'll send it for approval. And approval, hold on here, let's see here. Maybe pick one of these guys. Here we go. So now I will go and approve that as Patrick. I'm pretty sure it went to Patrick. And then we'll come back and we'll try it out. Okay, so as Patrick, I approved it. I saw it grab it for fulfillment. It says fulfillment succeeded. So now if we go look at Owen's approval right, he can approve if it's for compliance, but compliance only. So now if we want to test that very quickly, we can go and request our edit video right, and we've set that up to split by value for approval, which means that if we go and we request more than one value, it should generate one business request with multiple items. So we're going to request compliance, which should go to Owen now, and we're going to request nature. Let's add those to the cart. And you'll see it added more than one item to the cart. So even though we requested the same right, in this case it behaved differently because it knows that we have split by value. So let's take a look. So now we can submit this. I'll evaluate my request for risk. And then we can submit this. Okay. So now let's go take a look at that. And we'll see the business request in my tasks. And this is our split approval. And now we can see it's indeed two business request items. They're both using the approval policy, PBAC approval. And let's see here. One went to Owen. So this is the one for compliance. Now the other one, I don't think I have anybody configured at this point. Nope. Yeah, so no one can approve nature right now. So at this point, we would go back and would make sure that we have approval groups or virtual approval groups by granting some people who can approve compliance the approval right plus compliance, and others it would grant nature, and then the other category marketing. So this allows you to make it more fine-grained even on the approval side, that although this is the approval right for edit video, you might have different approvers depending upon the values selected, the field type values, or scopes as they're called. So that's just a quick overview. So at this point, just to recap, we have configured our right with multiple field type values. We've configured the right to have an approval right. We have configured it to split by field type value so that if I select multiple, it generates multiple business request items. And now we've added the field type to our approval right so we can granularly delegate who can approve for which values. And that's it for this video. I hope this clarified any questions on approval rights. Thank you very much.